I'm going to try and remember what I want to talk about. Yesterday I did some more of the Muse meditations. I did a couple of them, and I did it later at night. So I noticed that I was able to stay in the neutral or calm space for most of the time. I only spent 3 seconds in an active brain state. They have 3 categories: active, neutral, and calm. And I was neutral or calm for about half the time. So this app is showing that my brain is actually quite calm, and I'll show those results. I think I earned 13 birds. I can't remember. I'm not looking at the picture right now, but I will show the picture. And I got more calm points than usual. And then after I did it that first time, I tried it again because I wanted to see what would happen if I was looking at my computer and typing on my computer when I first started, just for comparison. So I did that, and I noticed that the app was giving me really stormy weather sounds, so I knew that my brain was likely active. So I didn't want to waste the whole session, so then I just sat in the calm space and noticed that my brain went into the calm. So I will show that just to compare that, yeah, if my eyes are open and I'm looking at the computer, my brain is active, but if I close my eyes and I'm calm, then my brain calms down. And then for the next challenge, they want me to do a 7-minute meditation, so I will do that tonight. It's getting late, so it's quieter. That's a better time to do it, because otherwise any little noise could potentially distract my brain. And then I was looking at the Muse Monitor app, and then I noticed for the first time that I could actually take a landscape screenshot of the data that it was showing me. And so when I did that, I actually noticed there was another line. So in the vertical screenshot, it just shows 40 hertz and 56 hertz. So I remember when I showed that once, I guesstimated one of my little amplitude bars in gamma at about 53 hertz. But when I actually took the landscape screenshot, I noticed that that bar that I was wondering about was about 2/3 the way between 48 and 56, which means that that band actually was 54 hertz. It wasn't 53 hertz. And so I Googled 54 hertz and I came across this YouTube video. And it's called 54 hertz Ascension Frequency, Binaural Beats, Synchronicity with Sacred Geometry, Quantum String, 432 hertz. And it shows a little calculation underneath the video. It shows 432 hertz divided by 8 octaves, and it says 54 hertz being the fundamental frequency of the quantum string in this primordial binaural beats sound template. And then it gives a bunch of other information. So it's calling 54 hertz the fundamental frequency, and something about an ascension frequency. So I thought that was interesting because that's the frequency band that shows up in my brain thing. And it might turn out to be nothing. I still haven't gotten a look at anyone else's brain with this Muse thing yet. But another thing I found really, really interesting about this 54 hertz ascension frequency is that when I pressed play on it, I was listening to the sound. And when I press play, this sound that I always hear disappeared. And I might have mentioned this sound that I hear when I was in California, because it was really there. It's like this. And I found that when I press play on this 54 hertz, it disappears because the sound of it coming out of my computer turns off the sound seemingly coming out of my brain, or just feeling like it's ever present, omnipresent everywhere. So as soon as I press play, I can't hear the sound that I always hear, but I hear the sound coming out of my computer. I almost feel like 54 hertz is the sound of my brain, because I hear this sound all the time. And it's only when I press play on this that it disappears, because the sound coming out of my computer almost takes precedence over my brain creating that sound. Or it's like I hear that sound everywhere, but if my ears are hearing the sound from a 54 hertz source, which would be pretty rare, it's not like I'm going to hear that anywhere, then it stops. So it's interesting that there's this 54 hertz band on my brainwave picture thingy, and then I found this 54 hertz thing that makes this sound that's always been going on in my brain disappear. And when I was living in that busy city before I left for California, I could hear this sound, and I actually thought it was the cars going by. But then when I got to California and I could still hear it, and it's very quiet there, I realized that maybe my brain is making this sound. And I didn't quite think of it that way. I thought maybe it was a generator somewhere making this sound. But then now, listening to this and how it turns off that sound is really bizarre. So maybe I'll play a little bit of it with no copyright infringement intended. It's called 54 Hertz Ascension Frequency, Binaural Beats Synchronicity with Sacred Geometry Quantum String, 432 Hertz. So it's really weird, because as soon as I turn this off again, it's replaced by the sound that I always hear. And it doesn't sound exactly like that, but in acoustics, if you have one sound playing and then you put in another sound in the song in the same range, they're going to cancel each other out. So it feels like the sound of this is canceling out the sound of my brain, which corresponds to that 54 hertz thing. And here it says it's something like an ascension frequency. So maybe I'm connected to an ascension frequency. I don't know. My brain sounds kind of like this, but a way slower vibration. It's just really strange, because pressing the play button on this literally feels like it presses pause on the brain sound that my brain is making. And imagine judging somebody based on if they have a calm brain. Imagine being able to look at one's ability to meditate, and if one only has this hyperactive brain and they can't go into a meditative state feeling like, ooh, I don't know if I want to talk to that person. Because right now, a lot of times we judge people if they have a so-called mental illness label, but we don't really know what is happening inside anyone's brain. But if we were one day hooked up to some kind of brain sensors, then anyone could know what's going on in our brain in a way. And the universe has already tapped into that information, and there's probably some kind of epigesturetic nature of the brainwaves, the gestures of the brainwaves. But who knows? So I just want to point out that even though I have a label of a mental illness, my brain is able to go into this neutral and calm state quite easily. Imagine if I were to only talk to people that had gamma waves in their brain. I still have to do more experiments to see if that's a useful measure, but we'll see. And I wonder if the high gamma waves, or even those waves of mania, can be passed on to others. If there's some kind of entrainment with these more powerful brain frequencies. I was thinking about trying to get organized, but it seems impossible. My days are even more random right now, and I'm finding it hard to keep up with what I wanted to do, like type out my insights. So I haven't been doing that. Today I actually discovered something called Dropbox Paper, and it's kind of a cool app for editing and collaborating. So I might try to incorporate that in some way. I was thinking of actually putting my videos in that and then sharing and then creating a collaboration around each video. I don't really know if that's worth it, but it was fun to at least play with for a little bit. And I don't know what else I discovered. I bought some sunglasses. I never wear sunglasses because I've read that one gets a better tan without them because the sensors for how much light we're being exposed to are around our eyes. But at the same time, I feel like just being in California and now being back in summer back home, I've been in this really prolonged summer and it's giving me this infinite squint, which is creating this frowny line here. And in light of what I read in that book, Stealing Fire, about how having a frown can actually make one feel down, I don't want to epigesturetically squint myself into a lower mood than I need to be in because I'm squinting from the sun. So I might wear the sunglasses sometimes. I'll show them to you. Whatever. And I came across a tweet by Natasha Tracy, and it's almost like she heard me talking about her because her tweet was related to her article that she wrote actually before I was talking about her, but I didn't see the tweet until after I talked about her. And she was talking about how saying to someone with bipolar disorder, oh, others are worse off than you are, isn't very nice. It doesn't really make someone feel better. And I was actually saying I feel bad because she's so much worse off than I am. So it is kind of true that there are people that are worse off. And I was saying that it seems like she's a lot worse off and I feel bad for her. I can't actually imagine that people would be that much worse off than she is. It sounds like she has a pretty difficult situation. I would hope that nobody is worse off than she is. Oh, and I was going to say about getting organized, I created a new word called explorganized because I don't know if I can ever get organized in the true sense that we might feel that word relates to, but I can just keep exploring and organizing as I go. And some things that I explore might just naturally fall away. And there's nothing I can do about that. I wonder if I'll ever get back to insights. So not exploring based on one's planning and organization, but just exploring and letting the organization fall into place. And today I did spend some time brainstorming business names, and the one I like the most is Pure Potential Wellness, but it's already taken, maybe in New Zealand, maybe it's okay here, but maybe not. So I'll just have to keep thinking and eventually figure something out with that. So I'm going to check out my screenshots to see if there's anything I missed, and then I'm going to do my 7-minute meditation, and we'll see if there's anything else I want to talk about today. There's this website called Ketamine Advocacy Network, and I opened it up, and they have this little ticker here that counts the impacts of depression, bipolar, and PTSD since opening this page. So I just opened the page about 25 seconds ago, and it's showing there were 2 suicides and pharma sales at 50,000, economic losses, of 1.6 million. And that's pretty impactful. And I was coming on this website to find that little snippet that I read when I was on this website a little while ago, saying that ketamine causes a brief dissociation feeling that can be a bit scary, but it was actually part of the process and part of the healing process of having this particular form of ketamine therapy. And I'm not promoting this or anything, I just thought it was interesting because in my experiences of so-called psychosis, I've had dissociation events each time, and I feel like it's a healing process, and part of the healing process is to really dissociate from everything and just feel lost and feel scared and alone and sort of starting from scratch again. It's not a pleasant feeling, but I just felt like it was interesting that there's this therapy through ketamine that will do the same thing, but it's part of the mechanism. It's not seen as, oh, well, if you do this therapy and you dissociate, that's a bad thing. So again, the universe has the same process that it induces in me without taking anything like ketamine. There's always an analogous process in the natural physiology and biology of the human body. Many of us have heard of the 30-day challenge. I realized the self-dialogue is kind of like a 365-day challenge. And I wonder how many people have done a 365-day challenge, documented the whole thing, barely told anyone, and then just share it all after the fact. Maybe that's kind of what research is all about, sharing when one has some sort of significant results in. And I've kept it to myself just to have it as a process for myself without being influenced by others. And I wonder what it would have been like had I told people every step of the way what I was going to do. I probably would have had people giving their opinions and judgments about things. Right now, it's not really safe to be out as somebody with a label of a serious and persistent mental illness and not taking conventional medical treatment. There's a lot of stigma on that. They talk all about the stigma about mental illness, but they don't talk about the stigma for people who choose to self-direct and explore other options besides what is out there as most prevalent, as in the psychopharmacology. And I made a note to myself not to extrapolate too much to convince, because I've already convinced myself of that which I wanted to convince myself of in terms of talking myself out of the paradigm of psychopharmacology. So anything else I say is just for fun, really. And I guess this is where to talk or not to talk becomes the question. Do I need to keep talking about that kind of stuff? I'm not sure. I sure wrote a lot more on the subject, so I could talk about it if it's of interest to my brain. And I think I was writing that down also regarding the book Stealing Fire. It's so interesting. I could extrapolate the whole thing and put it in terms of my context, but I have to choose how to spend my time. If I spend the next year extrapolating, I don't know if that's the best way to spend my time when I could create a business or something like that. Maybe I could pretend that I'm going to remember to do 5 minutes of extrapolating a day, just minimal, and the rest, whatever daily things I come across, as well as the research regarding the Muse headband. And I actually talked to the Muse people today, and they're releasing a cool dashboard product where people can keep track of other sessions if they're a life coach or something. So I'll probably design that into the plan. Here's something I wrote. The outer world is a result of our inner pharmacy. Our inner pharmacy is failing, as it's a biocorrelate of our egos. Then they sell us drugs. we should be able to access these states on demand in the moment. The new idea has to resonate with a critical mass of people. Show it's not a mental illness, but another world trying to be birthed out of us. And the important part of that was how whatever our inner pharmacy, our natural pharmacy is making is how we're going to experience the world. And most of us are dopamine dominant pleasure seekers, and we seek pleasure at the expense of others, and we're not oxytocin dominant. And I did talk a lot about that at a certain point. And I also thought of a concept called the inner butterfly effect, meaning when someone does a drug somewhere to get high, someone somewhere else kills themselves. So when we seek these inner pleasure states by just taking drugs indiscriminately, it affects the whole collective consciousness, because we're altering the inner space unintelligently. And it's one consciousness. So if we're creating an inner butterfly effect of unintelligence, that's going to affect the whole. So when somebody indiscriminately exercises this pleasure reflex through drugs, someone else jumps off a bridge somewhere else. Because that person who is just getting high could actually be reaching out a helping hand to the other, or vice versa. And I don't remember if I talked about this from Stealing Fire. It was on embodied cognition research and how it's best when we train our brains and our bodies together. And I feel like this is what mania does, but in real life, our bodies and brains are moving together for once. It's not like we're thinking about something over there and doing something here. We're really immersed in what we're doing. And our thoughts sometimes do seem to wander, but not really. They're just extrapolating to infinity from the moment. So it gets our brains and bodies working together, training together, because our whole life we've spent thinking about yesterday while on autopilot in the present moment. We don't know how to operate with both working together at the same time. And when that happens, we feel like we're not in control, because we feel like we're in control when we're thinking about the past or the future, and then our body's just going on automatic pilot. Really, we're not in control at all. So non-control feels like we have our hand on the steering wheel when we don't. As Krishnamurti would say, it's unpremeditated art. Note to self, not having any new insights. Slowly catch up. Don't waste the summer. So I did my 3 meditations with Muse. I did a longer one using a different background sound. I used the rainforest, and I thought I didn't do as well as when I used the beach sound. But then I tried another setting, which was the desert sound, and I did even worse. I was barely in the calm at all. And then I switched to this ambient sound mode, and I only did slightly better than the desert. So it seems like the beach setting is the best for me. The rainforest seemed a little bit distracting because the rain feels distracting to me. So I will go back to the beach starting tomorrow. My favorite place.